I backed out of the parking garage and I hit a car. And so right then I probably should have let my friend drive, but I didn't. So then we drove to Stoughton and I was going to meet my friend for something. I ended up like
That's like an hour drive.
Yeah, I don't even know. Don't even ask. My life was a mess so many different times. But I ended up like driving on the wrong side of the road. So then I pulled into like a Fridays or a restaurant to turn around, and like obviously I passed a cop, and then that's when they like followed me, and then they ended up pulling me over at a gas station, and then that's when they were like, they look up all your shit. I was almost done with everything, and then picked up my second OUI, and then
is that jail time?
I actually got sent to Framingham for like a month, just sitting there until like they decided what to do with me.
Welcome to the show, Christa.
Thank you.
So you have a podcast on recovery and addiction that I saw.
I do.
And what is that called?
It's called Christa Living Sober.
And that's Christa CH.
CHRISTA, yes.
And that's Living Sober, all one word. And you're on Spotify?
I am on Spotify.
That's awesome. How?
Google and Apple.
Oh, cool. And you have what?
I think is Anchor just like a link, and then it like sends you to Spotify.
Yeah, so Anchor is like the landing page, right? That's like the host where you post it and then they distribute it out. The only thing I didn't like about Anchor was I love that you could add songs from Spotify, right? And like make and put songs. So I love having music in there. But the problem was they didn't show that on Apple because the music was copyright. Right. They would only show those episodes on Spotify whenever I used music. So eventually I got my buddy, he's probably even listening. I didn't get him. He started writing music again, and then he sent me a little guitar riff that I loved. So I told him I wanted to use that as my opening and my closer. So, now I have original music. But before I was stealing some music, like Requiem for a Dream. Like, you ever seen it?
Yeah, that's a crazy movie. I watched it in a program.
And the score to that movie, it's like da-na, da-na, na-na. It's like really intense. Mm-hmm. So I cut that and made that my opening for the first. Like, if you go back to YouTube, I'm waiting just for those episodes to get taken down for copyright because I totally pirated. And I'm out of myself right now by putting it out there, and I don't care. It is what it is because I learned my lesson. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things you can do. And you're 12 episodes in?
Yeah, it's new.
It's new. It's fun though. Like, you're having fun with it.
Consistency is key. So when I have more time, I'll put more effort and time into it. But
and sometimes it's good. Like, I can record sometimes 3 episodes in a day, and then I'll have my next 3 weeks planned.
Okay, that's
like I'll do like a Saturday, and I'll sit here and have like 4 lined up, and then I don't have to record for a month. It's just a matter of editing and promoting.
Right.
So you learn those like little tricks and little ways to like go. I didn't know shit my first couple months. I was just guessing, and now I have a nice little rhythm going to the point where I can release daily episodes. You get there. The more you play around with it, the more you talk to people like me, and you learn some new tricks. Yeah. So what is your sober date, Christa?
December 6th, 2018.
Oh shit, you just celebrated 3 years.
He's got 3 years. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So December 6th, 2018. Can I ask what was happening in your life December 5th, 2018?
You can. I don't remember.
Xanax?
Mainly drinking, and I have no idea. I know like the 4th I went to work, and then after I went out to drink because that's what I like to do. But I drank way too much, and I ended up in the hospital, or something happened. Like, there's just a lot of blank space where I don't remember what happened to me.
It's funny, alcohol will do that, even though it's completely legal and completely accepted in society.
Great. No, my drinking brought me to the hospital for the last and final time, and I honestly don't know what happened, but I know that this time it was serious enough where I like had, I think like I call it divine intervention, but I had an out of body experience where I saw myself in the hospital bed. Like I was just like above myself, looking down onto myself in the hospital bed. And I was like, what? Like, it's crazy. But I knew then and there that I needed to change my life around. I needed to stop fucking around. I needed to stop drinking and doing drugs. And then something just pushed me like back into my body. And I woke up and I'm like, great, like here I am again, like in a hospital room. But this time I was like I need to get help. I need to change my life.
How old were you at the time?
My birthday is next week. I think I was 29. Yep.
Okay.
29. Wait, I don't know. 30.
How old are you going to be next week?
I'm going to be turning 32.
Okay. So yeah, you're 28, 29.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. So when did you start drinking?
I started when I was around 12, 13.
Okay, yeah, that was around when I did too. That makes sense. And you're like you're a New England girl, right?
Yeah, I'm from Braintree, Massachusetts.
I know Braintree very well. I used to go to that Best Buy all the time because like I lived in Plymouth and I lived in Carver. I lived in Middleborough, but I worked at the Best Buy in Kingston, which became Plymouth for years. And a lot of my good friends went up to Braintree because that was like the bigger store. So if you got promoted, you went to Braintree. And so I was always going up there to do like deliveries, or we were like, exchanging shit. Like I had to get stuff for a customer because they had more product. So, and plus the tea, I would always drive up to Braintree and park at the tea there and then hop on to go into the city as opposed to deal with, 93. There was no way in hell I was ever dealing with 93.
And there's never anything in Boston.
So. Oh my God. When you do park there. Yeah, when you do. Because I have attempted it one time and I'll never attempt it again. It's just not worth it. So yeah, I know Braintree well.
Like after a night of drinking, you go to your car and there's just like a ticket on the window.
Oh my old roommate went to film school in Boston and he was basically collecting parking tickets. Like he had so many parking tickets. I think he spent more in parking tickets than he did on film school. But anyway, so I know Braintree, and that's kind of a city where it's easy to walk around and drink.
It's easy. I mean, I feel like where I grew up,
you're not in the woods of Massachusetts. You're in the city.
But sometimes I feel like when you're in the woods, like my fiance is from like a town in Rhode Island where it's like woods and like all they did was like drink and like.
Oh, I lived in Carver. Everyone was in the woods drinking all the time,
But I mean,
cranberry bogs.
City and like, I mean, I guess like everyone just celebrates. I think it's just a New England thing in general, but everyone just celebrates any type of occasion. Like it can be anything and everybody's drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how I grew up with my friends.
It is
over everything. Like I think we partied every single like chance we could. Day drinking, night drinking, whatever.
You always had a reason to drink, right? You always found now, when was it that you realized that you were did you ever realize that you were drinking to escape? Or did you just think you were having fun then?
Well, honestly, I think from my first drink, like I realized how it made me feel. And it changed me. And I know alcohol is a depressant, but for me, like I was like, oh great, like an escape from my depression, an escape from like all the shit I've been feeling all these years, because it started probably around 11 where I just like knew I had a problem with depression and my mental health, and like nothing was helping, and then I found alcohol, I found partying, I found a better way of escaping. And so I mean, I got adopted when I was 5, but I was in the same family since I was an infant because I was placed like straight away into the foster care system because my mom was a crackhead. That's not nice to say. But my mom, like I was a victim of crack cocaine. Like what is it called?
Like when you were born, like where was she on crack in her system when you were born, and then she had to give you up right away because of CYS or
Yeah.
whatever you guys call them, children and youth, whatever. Everyone has different names, different states.
Yeah.
But basically, the department that protects the children in
Right.
Massachusetts said, "Hey, you can't have her because you tested positive for crack, and so did she when she was born."
Right. So I was like a preemie hooked up to the machine and everything. And, you know, it went off a bunch of times. Like I probably could have died then and didn't, luckily, you know, like God had a bigger purpose for my life. But so I went straight into foster care. And then luckily I didn't get moved around because you just hear horror stories. But I ended up staying in the same house. And then, you know, so my parents always were like, don't do this, don't do that. Like, you're not like your mom. You know, so I feel like for me, the addiction was already in my system, like already in place for me. So if I tried anything, it would just be like an automatic like addiction, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's what happened to me. And once I felt the alcohol, once I felt something that made me feel better than anything else, then it was just like, you know.
Yeah. And from what I've, heard from other people who've been through the foster system, and also they're like us, they're recovery, but they were also in the foster system. I was fortunate. It's not my story, but I've heard that story, and you're definitely not alone in that. And there's other people right now listening going, that's me too.
Yeah.
And from what I'm told is, you never really feel a part of, like when, even though you feel loved, you get all the presents, and, they tell you they love you and they tell you they care.
Yeah.
There's still that missing piece of who am I, and trying to discover who you were supposed to be. And, you could have been in a different trajectory, and there's a lot of what ifs. And so, and you start realizing that at 10, 11 years old, because that's the age where we start thinking for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before then, third grade, second grade, I have a second grade kid right now, and, we tell him how he feels, and it's not a bad thing. It's just we have to remind him, like, oh, it's okay to feel bad right now, Dominic.
Yeah.
Like, and don't worry, you can cry, buddy. It's okay. We're not going to be upset. Like, just tell us how you feel. But you don't start really thinking for yourself and exploring other things, I feel like, until like fourth or fifth grade.
Yeah.
You start getting this sense of, I want to be my own person. And were you their only child?
No, so it was a foster house. Like,
Okay.
so they were older too. So when they adopted me, they were like in their late 50s. So they were like older, like they already had their own family.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decided to take in foster kids.
How many foster brothers or sisters did you have?
They personally took in over 100, but there was always like their age was like babies or like toddlers or children. If needed, they would take in like teenagers or older kids, but it was mostly like kids under like the age of 16.
Can I ask how they were? Were they like they genuinely cared to help?
So they did, and I'm
Okay.
so blessed. Like I'm so
You
grateful I was in a loving home, because there are so many stories out there that in like abusive homes, and like it's just awful.
Well, there's
But
so many people like that, couples like
take
that.
advantage, and it happened a lot. They took advantage of the system, and
Yep, if they get 10 kids in there, then they're getting like $5,000 a month from the state for having 10 kids there, and they're getting paid to have them there. Then you're not seeing, So there are a lot of people that they'll take in a shitload of kids just to be able to collect money and then not do anything for them. So that's good that you actually.
Yeah, they were really loving. They were really great. I loved my dad so much. He was like an amazing like hero figure in my life, and
When did he pass?
I was in my 20s, I think, but he had Alzheimer's disease, so he had that for a very long time, and that's like later on in my story, but in my 20s was when I like.
Yeah, I jump around. It just when the way you said he was, it was more like he's no longer here, so I was just curious. So that makes okay.
I had a really, really great childhood though, from what I remember. And then when I turned into like my teenager, preteen years, it was just like really, really hard, trying to fit in. They were white, like they adopted me. Braintree is like a really white town, and like I was different.
Are you Portuguese?
I'm half Cape Verdean.
What is it?
half Cape Verdean.
Okay, I just knew Portuguese. There's so many Portuguese people up there. So.
But, and then, you know, you deal with like teenagers and like the whole thing, you know, it was just like a messy time. And then on top of dealing with depression and like the mental shit.
And if I'm correct, your age, you were becoming a teenager as social media was becoming a thing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if you were born like you were born in 90 or 89. Yeah. So by the time you're a teenager, it's the early 2000s. Now MySpace is out. And now all of a sudden you're in high school and now Facebook's out. And that's a lot of different kind of pressures that are new kind of pressures of trying to fit in. So that makes complete sense.
AOL, like instant messenger shit.
Oh, I remember that. I'm born in 86, Christa. I remember AOL. I remember AIM. I remember having on my Facebook page like in 2006. I had to go, actually right by you. I went to Quincy. That was my first college. I went to the Plymouth campus, right? Yeah. So because I lived down in Carver or Cava, how they say it. But I went to the Plymouth campus and I had to get an email address that was from the college in order to sign up for Facebook. That's how long ago I signed up.
Crazy.
I deleted that page eventually, you know, a couple of years ago, and I have a new page now, and I'm upset that I lost all my pictures from 2006. But it is what it is.
This episode is sponsored by MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center Association. We are in our meeting center where we do all these meetings for mental health and addiction. I can do this podcast anywhere. I can do this at home. I can do this in a closet. I can do this in a basement. It doesn't matter. All I need is somebody else to talk to about addiction and recovery. What I can't do from anywhere is help people with their addiction and their mental health problems. So if you can help out, you know, we do have a Venmo, we have a Cash App, we have a PayPal, we have an address you can send a check to, and, you know, all the money that gets donated goes towards rent, goes towards keeping the lights on, and goes towards keeping the internet on. So please, you know, if you can give $5, $10, $20, it doesn't matter. Anything you can is so appreciated. And if you are a local business, if you're a national business, whatever, and you want to be a part of what we're doing, you know, you can reach out to me and we can talk about how you can be a sponsor. But I'll let you get back to the episode.
So that makes sense that you're trying to discover yourself because of that time where things are changing so fast and so new, you know. Now, the first time you drank, you said you felt different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you felt accepted and you felt like this
Well, the girl I hung out with was older. We were in the same class, but she was older than me, so she knew like older people, and I feel like my group of friends were kind of older, and then my group of friends were also like the misfits, like the people who I guess weren't popular, like whatever, the potheads, whatever you want to call them back then, you know. So,
but like, it makes sense that you hang out with older people though, because you know it's not like you grew up in a house where everyone's the same age all the time, you know, right? So, like, I grew up in a house where I was this age, and my brother was 3 years younger, my sister was 9 years younger. Nothing ever changed. We were always that age difference. But you're getting kids in and out, different ages between infant to teenagers, and you're just in the middle saying, what the fuck, where am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
So, you know, that makes sense to me that you would attract yourself to an older crowd because they're going to accept you and they're going to, you know, guide you along the way as like their little sister. You know, every group has a little sister or a little brother that they take along. Trust me. We all had our like little brothers that they weren't really our little brother, but they were a couple years younger and they hung out with us because they felt lost.
Yeah.
You know, so that makes so much sense to me. And when you discovered drinking and now you have all these older friends, it's easy for you to get it, right?
Yeah, it was easy to get alcohol. I mean, we did do the stand out in front of the store asking people to buy when we couldn't and stuff like that. But I feel like we always had something to drink. And whether
you guys call it the packy?
Packy, yes. Yeah. But her parents were more laid back too. And so I would always stay over there and we'd steal their cigarettes, steal their alcohol. You know, so at my house, that was probably, you know, like they didn't want me hanging out with her. But
when did your parents ever catch on in your teens? Did anything ever happen? Like, you know, I got alcohol poisoning when I was 16, the night before Easter. So that's what my parents found out, that I was like drinking way too much, was when I got alcohol poisoning at 16. Did anything like that happen to you when you were a teen still living there?
multiple times. I've gotten alcohol poisoning. Yeah. And then
When was the first time you got it?
I don't remember, but I know it was probably 9th grade, probably in high school. I do remember one time I got it. We all were like chugging Smirnoff, like thinking that was a great idea. And then me and this other girl ended up getting sick, and then people all panicked and like left me and this girl outside in the snow. And then next thing you know, like the ambulance is there, like trying to like help us. And then you wake up in a hospital with your parents like above you, and you're like, oh, great.
Been there.
And you just continue drinking. I mean, I did anyway.
When I was 16, it was the night before Easter, and I showed up late to the woods where the party was, and I had a fifth of Bacardi-O, and I chugged it and drank it in 10 minutes. And we were in the woods, so when I was like passing out, and this has all been told to me because I don't fucking remember, they rolled me onto a piece of plywood because people used to do BMX back there and bike, and they had ramps. So they rolled me on a piece of plywood, and they called an ambulance, and they carried me out of the woods. And as soon as they heard the sirens, though, they got spooked, and they all dropped me, and I landed on my head. So I ended up in the hospital, and I woke up like from my dad. My dad brought my little brother to see me, and my brother was 13. It was to like scare him straight. And he ended up not even drinking until he was 16 because of it. But yeah, it was just like, it was one of those nights where I woke up in a fucking hospital robe in my living room going on Easter morning going, what the hell happened?
Yeah. There was a lot of what the hell happened situations.
Yeah. How did your parents react when you ended up in the hospital?
I think mainly when that happened to me, they were like disappointed, but I feel like they were more worried. They were more like caring. They were just like, you know, there would be times where I cried to my mom and I'm like, I need help. I mean, that was probably more later on too. I probably said that a lot of times to my mom. And they've always been really supportive of me, as well as disappointed, but more supportive.
Well, it's good. I mean, you know, I hate to say, but you don't take in foster kids and expect to have kids that are going to live a normal life growing up.
Yeah.
You know, you can try and give them a normal life all you want, take them on trips, make sure they get ice cream, you know, make them happy, get them nice gifts. But as kids get older, we are already going to start wondering and wanting to discover and wanting to find out who we really are.
Right.
And, you know, our parents can do everything right, whether my parents who, you know, birthed me and they did everything right, and your parents who took you in and did everything right. We're still people who are curious and still want to find ourselves and figure out who we are without someone telling us who we are. So, you know, it's not our parents' fault. It's not your mom's fault. It's not my parents' fault. My parents did everything they could to make sure I lived a very happy and healthy life. My brother and sister, they're doing amazing. Never had any kind of substance issues. You know what I mean? You know, my sister had bought a house at 22, you know, like.
Oh, that's
like,
good.
22, I was a year into my pill addiction, you know, like, that lasted for a decade. So, you know, I'm very happy that I'm the one that took the bullet, you know, for them, that I was the first one through the gate so that they could know not to do what I did and be an example of do this instead, you know, do that instead. Because
I wish I kind of was that role model. Like sometimes, I mean, I used to blame myself for like, because they adopted a girl and a boy after me.
Yeah, but again, Krista, that girl and boy are gonna be like you, and they're gonna want to find out, you know, for themselves who they really are.
Yeah, I know now that happened, but because Sean, he had a lot of issues growing up in his teenage years, you know, in and out of juvie, stuff like that. It wasn't a lot of like alcohol and drug related. It was more like
rebellious breaking in.
Rebellious, like degenerate shit. You know, my sister was the youngest, and she kind of like probably saw both of us go through different things, so she never really like got into trouble like that, but she had issues in her own way, you know. Not to get into this on there.
But yeah, exactly. Yep.
She's amazing now. And then my brother, though, our brother, he actually ended up getting shot in Dorchester. Like, was it last year or a year ago? So he was just like he was doing so much better. And then he ended up being in the wrong place, the wrong time. Dorchester is a mess. So
yeah, I mean, anyone who has been, and it's funny because you mentioned, we talked about Best Buy earlier. I remember a grand opening, the Dorchester Best Buy. It was 2006 or 2007, and I was there all week long getting the store ready to open for their big opening, and we were already finding empty CD wrappers in the aisles from the new employees.
Yeah.
It wasn't even having any customers in there, and there was already theft. We're like, man, I'm glad I'm not working in this store, this theft issue. Like, this is bad. And so, yeah, Dorchester, for people that don't know, watch Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
You want to learn about Dorchester, watch them Go Will Hunting.
It's just changed over the years. A lot of crime and guns.
Mark Wahlberg, that's where he's from, born and raised. Whenever you hear about Mark Wahlberg talking about all the crime and all the theft and
Southie, all that shit.
Southie is right next to. It's basically Dorchester. Yeah. I mean, it's the same difference. It's Braintree, Quincy, Dorchester, South. It's that's how it goes. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry about your brother. It's obviously not going to be ever easy thing. I'm glad your sister's amazing though, and that's the difference is they were all trying to discover who they are.
Right.
And, with my brother and sister, we all know where we came from. So there wasn't that kind of journey where they needed to find and go different paths. Right. So that was how we were fortunate. Mm-hmm. So when did you move out of there? Did you go to college, or did you just move out when you were in your 20s?
No, I kind of stayed. I was still trying to find myself. I was a mess. My drinking led me to, at 17, sitting in my guidance counselor office, asking for help. I was like, I need help. I knew I had a problem with drinking, but I knew I also had a mental health issue. So I needed help because I was scaring myself. And that was at 17. So that was my first time. I went away to somewhere in Westwood, and they it was a dual diagnosis, inpatient and treatment place. So that was the first time I got help, and then I stayed there, and I finished my high school degree actually in that program because it was around that time where I was supposed to be graduating. So I didn't really walk with my class, which is fine, but I did get my diploma.
It's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's hot as balls. It's usually mid-June. It's hot as balls. You're in this gown and you're in the sun, or you're in a stuffy auditorium. Either way, I don't want to. I don't need that shit again.
Right. But I did, and then I stayed there probably a month, and then from there, they send you to another program, and then another program, and then eventually I went to this all-girl living, living house. I guess it was sober living. I didn't know that at the time. I was 17, but it was out in Lawrence, Mass, up there. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a great place at the time either. But I didn't even finish that program, and I left and continued partying and drinking at 17.
Did you go back home?
Yeah.
Did your mom know you were going to come back home with the intentions of drinking again?
Probably, if the programs didn't really help me, and then just going back to the same people, the same crowd. But I did try, to hold down jobs. I did go to Quincy College at the time for a few years, and and then I think during those years, my dad was struggling with Alzheimer's, so it was hard to be at home, and then just seeing your hero figure kind of diminish, it was very hard.
It runs in our family, Alzheimer's. Yeah, my namesake, I'm the fourth in my family. Mm-hmm. The junior, he had it, or he was gonna have it. He also got diagnosed with something else, and then he was like, just let it take me because I don't want to have Alzheimer's. We could have gave him dialysis and all this stuff, and he was like, I'm too old to have, because his mom had Alzheimer's too. And she lived to be 96. And he's like, I don't want to be that lost in my 90s like she was. Just let me go. I lived a good life. And we're like, okay, see you later, Papa. And it was sad. And that was 2012 he passed. And then my other grandfather passed literally 2 weeks before that.
Yeah, I think it was 2012, 2013 when my dad passed.
Yeah, it was 2012 for me. It was September, October 2012 when my grandfather's passed. I also lost a good friend that year, my best friend. My studio is John Johnson Memorial Studio, and John Johnson's my best friend since we were younger, and he got in a bad car accident June 12th, 2012. And I was living in my parents' shed at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I ran in a power cord out there, and I lived in their shed so I could just get high all day because I wanted to be able to smoke cigarettes. Not like they wouldn't let me in their house.
Right.
I wanted to be able to get high and smoke cigarettes without going outside. So that was the only place I could do that, was living in a shed. So that lasted until the winter time, and my girlfriend was like, "Can we go like be in your basement instead?" I'm like, "Okay." So,
I moved into the basement.
yeah, an unfinished basement with concrete floors and not, the ceilings. You could see the wires everywhere. Yep.
That was my bedroom, so.
Fancy. Yeah, it was my bedroom for a couple of years too. Really fancy stuff. So when is it in your 20s? How much can you think of? Like, were you any getting DUIs?
Yes. So I have 2 from drinking. But so I didn't want to be at home because it was just like a bad scene and it was dramatic, my mom dealing with my dad, and then it was just sad. And so drinking, let's go out to the bar. Like, I never wanted to be home. And I don't even know. I guess I was at that point a functioning alcoholic because I did go to college. I tried to like hold that down, and I did hold like a waitressing job down. But I still went out. My paycheck basically went to drinking and to whatever. But then when was my first OUI?
Oh, you guys call it an operating.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if that's a mass thing.
It is. It's probably just a way to tax you again, because Massachusetts, like the excise taxes out the ass on everything up there. They find a way to tax you on everything up there. So
it's like really hard to remember my first OUI right now. Probably because like I remember my second one way more. But
let's talk about that, when that happened.
So I had the first one, right? And then I did all the shit I needed to do through the courts and everything. And then it was just like, as soon as I was about to get off my my first, I picked up my second. So it was just like bad luck. But that happened in Stoughton, the second one.
When was the second one? How old were you?
It was 2015.
2015, so 3 years before you got sober. And where were you just at the bar and you just had too much?
Well, no, I was drinking all day probably, and I hung out with a friend. We went to Boston, and I probably shouldn't have been driving because like I backed out of the parking garage and I hit a car, and so right then I probably should have let my friend drive, but I didn't. So then we drove to Stoughton, and I was going to meet my friend for something, and I ended up like.
That's like an hour drive.
Yeah, I don't even know. Don't even ask. My life was a mess so many different times. But I ended up like driving on the wrong side of the road. So then I pulled into like a Fridays or a restaurant to turn around, and like obviously I passed a cop, and then that's when they like followed me, and then they ended up pulling me over at a gas station, and then that's when they were like, they look up all your shit. I was almost done with everything, and then picked up my second OUI, and then
is that jail time?
I actually got sent to Framingham for like a month, just sitting there until like they decided what to do with me. So
how was that?
It was interesting to say the least. You just see a lot of shit. The ride over there, I saw like a girl like ODing on heroin, and to this day I don't know if she's still alive, but that place is just like a sad, dark place, and it's unfortunate that jails are like that, but but it makes you in with like the murderers and like the crazy shit. So you just have to go in with like you can't be like terrified and scared. You just have to like go in and like hold your own shit, and like be strong. Or
you'll same with sobriety though.
But it is the same, yeah.
Because one of the things about getting sober is the fear of getting sober and what's going to happen with our lives if we don't drink.
Right.
You know, I know me personally, I held off getting sober for years because I was afraid of what my life would look like without the drink or the drug.
Yeah.
And
I think
that
that's
fear.
how like holds us into the addiction.
Yeah. Were you ever fucking around with any kind of drugs at all too, or just mainly a
I
drink?
use drugs all the time, but I don't think I really got sucked into the drugs like I could have. I mean,
You
there's a
didn't
lot.
you didn't catch a habit.
I don't think so. I mean, I could have.
Oh, opiates were, I mean,
Opiates were
huge.
around that time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember.
Well, in
Was
the
it
90s, but I remember the kids older than me were taking them,
Yeah.
and I've lost so many people.
There's
Just
literally a movie
like
about
heroin.
it's called Oxymoron. It came
Yeah,
Oxymoron, and it's
I know
all
John
about.
Wick. I know
Oh,
the guy.
do you really?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's so nice. I want
Have him
to
on your show.
I want to. I'm gonna ask
Yeah,
him.
and then then there's on HBO, Heroin
Oh.
Cape Cod Heroin USA or whatever it is.
On
And-
Hulu, there's a show called Dope Sick. I just watched that with my fiance. It's really good.
We can talk about it for a second. We have time because I watched it. So spoiler alerts for anybody who hasn't watched it. Maybe fast forward a little bit, because I thought that was so well done. It was so spot on. Is your fiance recovering from opiates?
He's recovering from alcohol that led to heroin.
Okay, so yeah. And for me, alcohol led me to pills.
Yeah.
Alcohol stopped working for me after I was 21, and I had gone to the bars so much and it just wasn't working. And then I discovered pills, and it was a wrap. I barely cared about drinking because the pills were my new love and my new escape. So I get that, but I'm still an alcoholic. I drank alcoholically for many years in my teens, and I would have drank alcoholically in my 20s if I didn't discover pills. Let's be honest.
Right.
That would have continued. It just would have been more socially acceptable. That's a fucked up thing.
My drinking led me there to something worse.
Yeah, and Dope Sick is a great. Anyone who hasn't watched it, you definitely should, because it shows this isn't our fault. This isn't all it is my fault. I take blame for what I did. Yeah, of course I did the shit I did, but it all started with a lie.
Yeah.
All those drugs that are on the market probably wouldn't even made it to the market originally if it wasn't for that lie. I never would have discovered 30 milligram Roxy's if it wasn't for that lie. And those 30s, I remember the first time I sniffed it, I'm like, I'm in fucking love. This is what I need, and it's all built on that lie, the Sackler family. And I'm so glad that now it's out there. People know, this is what it is.
3 years ago, right? Or something recently. And it
literally
took that long. I was just dumbfounded, but it's sickening how
2 weeks ago they just did more. The Met in New York City just announced they're taking down the Sackler wing and going to name it something else. That's just 2 weeks ago. So people are still trying to now push away from the Sackler family now that show came out. So I'm so glad that they did that.
Yeah, no, that show kept it real. And it's so disgusting, the big pharmaceutical companies and what they do to people. It was sad.
Money. We were money to them. They knew.
It's still happening, with different things. And
oh yeah, I mean, look at fentanyl now.
I know, it's horrible, and that's in everything. Not just a pill.
I was just talking to my sponsee today. I'm so happy he texted me. It's his 6-month anniversary today. And it's the most time he's ever had. Since he was a teenager. 15 years of meth and drinking, and we were talking about how he remembers kicking fentanyl because there was fentanyl in the meth around here.
Fuck.
Yeah, he gets a Vivitrol shot, right? And I remember when he got his Vivitrol shot, he was a month and a half sober, and I was like, shit, Vivitrol usually takes people to meth because it doesn't, and so I was talking to him, and I was like, hey, you got that Vivitrol? That's awesome, because I took him to get it. I drove him there, and I was like, by the way, didn't you say that fentanyl was in meth around here? He was like, yeah, it's everywhere around here in meth. I'm like, so if you did meth, you would get really sick because you're a Vivitrol shot. And he was like, oh, shit, yeah, I would. So it dawned on him that he couldn't even do meth with his Vivitrol shot. And, now he's celebrating 6 months, and he just had a new baby, and he's doing awesome. So I'm so happy. Congrats, Eric, if you're listening or watching. I just gave him one of my old chips as a, thank you, because I have a whole...
Oh, yeah. I try to get them.
So
Yeah,
I pull out
one.
ones. Yep, I recycle them though because I have a meeting center, so I'll recycle them. I'll hand them out to people. You know, I think that's a good way is to recycle and reuse them, the old chips. So I have CA in there, NA, AA. I have a bunch of different chips in there. So now you're in your 20s. Did you try to get sober at all in your 20s before that hospital stay in 2018?
There were times where the court forced me to go get help. I remember going to the Women's Addiction Treatment Center. It's called WATSI. I forget where it is. It's in Mass. So I spent some time there, and I thought I really had it then, and I didn't. I didn't until 2018. But
were you forced into AAs, like any 90 and 90s or anything like that, where you got to get a court card signed and everything?
Yeah. So after the Framingham shit, I got off by doing drug court. So they let you out early if you make a deal, and then you go to drug court and you have to do a class every single day. You have to pick up trash on the side of the highway 4 times a week.
Which highway?
All of the major ones that are in Mass, it was embarrassing, but
I don't miss driving in Massachusetts. That's one thing I don't miss. And it confused me. The first time I ever drove up there, it was before GPSs existed, right? So I had MapQuest printed out when I was driving up there, my dad gave me directions I had to write down and shit. So I'm he goes 95 north, just take 95 north. And then when you get 95 north, you're going to go 495 south. I'm wait, you want me to go north and then south? Why don't I just get off the exit earlier, Dad? Why am I going to go north and then south? And he was no, in Massachusetts, south, 495 south actually goes east and west and not really north and south like 95 does. I'm what the fuck? Or why are we moving up here? This is so confusing.
It's crazy. I don't get it.
Eventually, I would ended up finding my own way just for my own head because I literally couldn't compute the north and south. So I would actually get on 195 in Providence and then cut up 195 and then take that up to,
it's a mess.
Plymouth that way. Yeah, it's such a mess. It's such a mess. Anyone who's ever driven up there, the highway system is just it's so confusing. It doesn't make it. And I grew up in Jersey where it's super confusing too. So when I lived in LA, they're oh, the traffic here. I'm you're cute. It's so easy.
Have you been to England?
Yeah, because the traffic in LA is constantly moving. It looks like it's crowded, but you're still moving. I've been stuck on 93 for an hour. I've been stuck on the Bourne Bridge in the Cape for 45 minutes. It's so bad. So, all right, now you're doing these drug courts. Obviously, they're not helping, but
Actually, the drug court I got into, they made me go on a breathalyzer too. So it helped during that period of time where I was on the breathalyzer because I couldn't fuck that up. Even though I think you get a 3-strike rule, and I did fuck up at least a couple of times, but they were all right, don't fuck up.
But let's be honest. How often were you counting down the day that you would be able to fuck up and it not matter? Were you always counting down to getting off?
I was sober. I got a job at a Packy in Braintree.
For people that aren't from by the way, Packy is not used anywhere else but Massachusetts.
So weird.
Whenever we say Packy, that means it's a package store, which means it's a liquor store. So I found out when I was up there, oh, we got to go to the Packy. I'm the fucking whatty? And they're the Packy. It's where you buy liquor. I'm what? Yeah. They're package store, JD. We call it a Packy. Yeah. And I'm you guys and your fucking Cumbies and your Packies. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love me some Cumbies. Cumberland Farms, again. So if you don't know, Cumbies is Cumberland Farms. It's like a Wawa, like a 7-Eleven, but it's amazing. But anyway, but you're counting down. Let's be real. You're all right, I got to do my time with this, and then I can go get fucked up again.
Okay.
You weren't trying to live sober then.
Because as soon as I got off of that, I went back to drinking because, it worked temporarily. It worked for the 9 months,
It worked because it had to work.
It did.
You didn't want to go back to Framingham.
You fuck up in Quincy Court or any court, you want to just be done with all that.
You don't want to go back to Framingham.
You don't want to go back to jail. Although one time my died, and like you get like a 3-strike rule with that too, and whatever. I couldn't charge it. I don't know what happened, but the cops showed up at my house and ended up like taking me, and I spent like a weekend at Birmingham again. I'm like, really? So yeah, they're serious about drug court and stuff. Like even if breathalyzer dies and you can't take your test, it's like it's serious.
So and when was that? That was 2015. So and then 2016 you're off drug court and you're back to drinking again.
Oh yeah.
But luckily for you, what do you think it was, December 6th in the hospital? What do you think the difference was that time that compared to other times where you were in the hospital or getting DUIs or in jail where, you're in fucking jail for 30 days and you're still like counting down the drink again? What was the difference this time?
Honestly, it was that divine intervention. It was the higher power magic that's real. Like something greater than myself, like helped me in that moment. And that's kind of what happened. Like that's kind of how I got my faith back too. So I went straight to detox in Foxborough. And I stayed there for about a month. And then I was like, I knew I couldn't go back to Massachusetts. I knew I couldn't go back to the way I was living. So they were like, there's an all-girls program in New York, or there's Salvation Army in Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm like, so I chose Providence, Rhode Island.
It's easy to hop on a bus and go up to Boston and visit your mom, from Providence.
But I mean, I wasn't even thinking that. Like I wanted nothing to do with going home this time too. So that was kind of different because before I did want to go home. I did want to still do what I was doing, but this time, like, I was just done.
Yeah. Now, did you get into, were you doing program work? Were you forced into like any kind of, you don't have to say which fellowship for tradition's sake, but you did start going to a fellowship, and start hitting some meetings and going to programs?
Yeah.
In Providence?
The way the Salvation Army is set up is you're like kind of on a 2-week lockdown when you're there, so you can't go anywhere. Kind of like focusing on yourself. And then when you get that freedom, they want you to work the program. It's very religious too. So it's not for everyone, but it works. Faith is such a huge part of recovery. I can't stress that enough, but it's hard because some people aren't into that faith, but they make you get out of your comfort zone. They make you go to meetings, and then come back for curfew. You have to get the paper signed. They keep you aligned.
Yeah, Salvation Army has a great program for people that don't know,
It saved my life. It saved my fiance's life. So many people.
When did you meet your fiance? Because you guys are both sober.
I met him April of 2019. 2018. I don't even know.
2019.
We met during the program and we weren't supposed to, but like, I don't know. Everyone calls us the exception now. Because like we have a really great relationship. And
hey, I know plenty of people that met early in sobriety, and they still were together. They're married, they're happy, and they run a great program together. They support each other. They go to meetings together. They go to meetings separately. Even like it's funny because I met my wife in April 2019.
Yeah.
April 7th, 2019 is when I met my wife, and I was coming up on a year sober at the time. And I would not get serious with her. She knew, like, her dad was like 30 years, like an old timer, like, so she knew the deal. But we met like on Tinder, and I told her, like, listen, it's strictly like I'm friends with benefits until I have a year. Like, and we lived an hour away from each other anyway, and she was just coming out of a bad divorce anyway. So, but when I came back from LA, I went to LA to celebrate my 1-year anniversary because that's where I got sober. So I wanted to go back there to celebrate with my old like rehab and my old people that I got sober with. And when I came back, I proposed to her. So we went from fuck buddies, friends with benefits, to engaged. So it happens how it happens, and you're, married. And
it was just so frowned upon in like the recovery community and Salvation Army and programs like that, because it's so easy for people to like get wrapped up in the wrong person or blah, 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 whatever.
But let's be real, I would say 90%, 9 out of 10 of those relationships, either one or both go out together.
Yeah.
you know, and get like, but the important thing is that you weren't in addiction together, right? So
Right.
that I think is a huge difference. Like my wife and I always say, we're so glad we met when we met because we're both sober now. But if we would have met in addiction years together, we would have been toxic as fuck for each other. You know,
Yeah.
we could have
Right.
died together from our toxicity. But because we love each other so much and we care and have so much empathy for each other,
Mhm.
that spills over in addiction, right? And that care and that kind of like, you know how it is when you're in addiction with somebody, that camaraderie of like, you know, the things that nobody else knows about me because I'm too ashamed to tell them. And then you have that relationship built on all those kind of secrets and that kind of like weird trust between drugs and you and your partner. So it's a really toxic thing. I've had two couples on the show. Well, both the women. One's from Massachusetts, actually. She's been on a couple times now. She has her own show on Instagram,
Yes.
and she does a lot of stuff about cannabis recovery.
Okay.
And but her and her husband, they were robbing banks together.
Yeah.
They got arrested. You know, he did 9 years for robbing banks in Texas. She
Yeah.
was in a rehab in Texas, and he drove down there to get her from rehab, and then they robbed some banks, and then they drove back to Mass to get high. You know, and she ended up doing like 18 months or something like that, and he did 9 years. But
Yeah.
they're both sober as shit, 5+ years now, and married, happy, and they spent 8-9 years in addiction together. So, you know, another couple I talked to from Ohio, they were driving 22 hours, 7 times a month from Ohio to Florida to get perks.
Wow.
22 hours each way, 7 times a month. And so they did that for years, 5 years together. They were in addiction for 7 years or 14 years, and now they've been clean 3 years together. They have kids, and it works. So sometimes it does work. A lot of the times it doesn't. So it's always, and you're gonna do it too, and I still do it. You have to give the warnings. You have to tell that couple, you better be careful, you better be communicating, and you have to have other support networks besides yourself. You can't just be talking to each other, you know, like Mikey and I, we talk a lot. Yeah, we communicate everything with each other, but we don't just talk to each other. We talk to other people. We have other supports, whether it's like all women's or me, a bunch of men. We have different kinds of support.
But also, like, one thing that is crucial that we agreed for each other is, like, we put God first. This is just our thing, but we put God first, and then we put ourselves first, and then we put each other. And that was just, like, something that, like, worked for us, worked for our recovery. Because without the first two things, we couldn't do, like, me and him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you met 5 months sober. So
Right.
for you, that, you know, you have a little bit of we start getting our mental faculties back around 90 days, right?
Yeah.
And then
Right.
by 9 months, we feel like a different person again, you know, where, you know, you feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So how much time does he have? How sober was he when you guys met? Because, like, you know, you had been in there for 5 months, you know, December to April. When did he get in there?
A little bit before me.
Okay, cool.
So he has about 3 years in November. I have 3 years in December. So it's like I'm right behind him. So it's
Okay,
kind
cool.
of like, yeah.
So then he even had an extra month to where when he met you, he could be cautious and to make sure that you were ready and you guys could communicate well. Like, I feel like that's good that you could go through it together. Like, you both, okay, you don't need to be sober together. You wanted to be sober together, right? Before when you were getting DUIs or OUIs, you needed.
The relationship lasted.
Yeah.
Every relationship was just like a mess, you know, and like arguing and fighting and just.
Well, you needed to be sober then. Need with an N is a big thing. You needed to be sober so that the courts didn't put you in jail. So you needed to be sober. Now, you and your fiance, you both wanted. And when you consciously want to be sober and not need to be sober, that's when it really starts to work. When you go into something saying, I want this, like I want my drug. I will do whatever it is to get my drug. I will do whatever it is to get my sobriety. You have to want it that bad. And until you want it that bad, I hate to say, it rarely works.
Yeah, you have to want it. It's a big thing.
You know, I've seen people in and out of programs for years. They're in and out of VAs, they're in and out of rehabs, they're in and out of whatever, the streets. They look this they look all thin, they look big and bulky, they look all thin. And I know that they're struggling. And I know people are still struggling out there that I love and I care about, friends, family, whatever. And all I can do is say, hey, I'm here when you're ready.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell somebody to go get sober. That's not going to work. You have to want it.
Everybody, yeah.
And I told my parents that all the time. That's why it worked for me, is because I went to rehab because I said I want to go to rehab now.
Yeah.
I'm done with doing this. I want to go to rehab. I don't want to live this life anymore. And that's why it works. It's because I wanted to. I didn't go there with a need. Because when you go there with a need, you have a clock in your head of when's it's going to run out so I get fucked up again.
Right. And it works if you work it. You have to work it.
Yeah. And Massachusetts has amazing recovery. You know, like I said, there's been multiple Mass people on here, and actually coming out.
I'm really grateful for Rhode Island, because I wish I did that a long time ago, but I'm glad I did.
Well, yeah, New England, I mean, in general, like.
Yeah, New England has a lot of, like, it helped. Yeah.
You know, you're the third Quincy person on here now, including myself, because coming out on Thursday, well, by the time your interview's out, it's already out. My guy, Larry, him and I met at Quincy in 2006 or 2007, and he was in his 40s, and he was 10 years sober then. I didn't know what 10 years sober meant at that time. I just knew that this dude in his 40s didn't drink. That's all I knew. But he was going back to school to change his life. That's what I knew. And he was on my show the other day because we're friends, been on friends on Facebook since, like I said, Facebook 2006. We've been friends for years on Facebook, and now I'm clean, and he knows what I'm doing. So he was on. It's a 2-hour episode. His stories of what he did growing up in because he grew up in Randolph, I believe.
Oh God.
So right by you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like
there a couple of times. It's interesting.
The movie theater. Everyone knows that movie theater where you can get drunk at. The movie theater in Randolph, they literally serve you fucking beers at your fucking, while you're watching a movie. Like, that's what I know Randolph as, the movie theater you can get drunk at. But Larry, Quincy alum too, and now he's a substance abuse counselor. And that's what he does, is he helps people all the time with their issues. And he has season tickets to the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Patriots. Like, he does very well. He started a business in sobriety, and his story is really good. So look for that, because you'll relate a lot to the Mass stuff. But yeah, I liked your episode, by the way, with that girl from Massachusetts. I added her on Instagram. That was a really good episode. So I think, did you know her already, or did you see her on social media?
Yeah, hang out, but I didn't know, like, that part of her, which was amazing. It's like you can hang out with people and not really know what they're going through.
That's my boy Franklin. Yeah, I just had him on over the weekend.
Like, longer than you, and you're like, what? Like, wow,
Yeah, I had a guy on here, Franklin. He's been on 2 episodes now, and him and I were in high school together, and we didn't really hang out, but we were in classes together. He was really quiet, and I was really extroverted. I was really, like, out there, and but he came on my show, and we found out how much we really had in common when he was on the first time, and then he just did a follow-up a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's just funny how we don't really know what some people are going through, even when they're right next to us and you're going through it with them. Right. And you find that more and more, the more interviews you're going to do, the more people you talk to. I have a panel coming up on Saturday. I've talked to like 6 women from Ohio, all randomly. I met, some on Instagram. I met some on TikTok, some on Facebook. None of them know each other. All have so similar stories. Right. Actually, 2 of them, they were trafficked together by the same couple.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, and they haven't really talked in sobriety, but they know each other from when they were trafficked and on drugs together. So they're going to be on my show together at the same time on Saturday. Well, it will be out by Christmas. But yeah, I'm going to sit down with them and like 5 other girls, and we're going to have a nice talk about Ohio and their drugs. Yeah. And I might do that with a bunch of states that I keep seeing, like, you're like the 4th or 5th Mass person, so I might do that with Mass. I'm trying to get my Jersey guys together and do like a big panel with all my Jersey guys. Yeah. And just because, it makes me feel better to unite people with people similar to them so they can feel not alone.
I love that. Yeah, that's kind of one reason why I wanted to start this, because, it's not always easy for people to get out there and make a move to go to a meeting or surround themselves by the sober community.
Yeah, and the thing is too,
You can
like,
do it online. Yeah.
this is part of my recovery. Like, no one came to AA this morning, right? Like, usually I had this dude that comes to AA every morning. He just went back to jail. He got out at 9 a.m. Because he missed too many meetings, and so they sent him back to jail. So he stopped here on Thursday. I heard a knock at my door at noon, and he's like, "Hey, I got a vent. I got to go back to jail on Saturday, and I'll be out on Tuesday, and I need a constant meeting." I said, "Come and see me, motherfucker. Like, I'm here, dude." Like, he's in his 50s and he's just trying to figure it out. And I'm like, dude, I'm here. Just come. Text me. You see my car? Just come over, man. Even if we sit down and talk one-on-one for an hour when it's not an official meeting time, I'll still mark you down for a meeting. And come here and talk. That's all I need you to do. We don't need to pray in. We just need to talk. Yeah. And if that's all you want to do, that's what we'll do, man. I don't want you to keep going to jail. You have a beautiful German Shepherd. Bring him on to the meeting, you know? So, he just got out this morning, so I knew he wasn't going to be here. But this is my meeting, you and I talking. This is my meeting for the day. This is how I stay sober for today. Whether 10 people or 100 people or nobody listens to this interview, this is how I stayed sober today. And, you'll
people to make a meeting.
Yeah, it's all you need is two. And even though, we had different upbringings, but look how much we still have the same things in common. And that's the whole point is this. The more interviews you put out, the more you're going to find how much we have in common with people over the fucking world. Yeah. Tomorrow's coming from Scotland. You're going to see an interview tomorrow that I did with a girl in Scotland. And she's your age, and, she is sober now, living up in Scotland. And she lives where whiskey is like, Scotland whiskey is made. It comes from Scotland all over, and she has big distilleries all around her, and it's so socially acceptable. Yeah,
I wouldn't drive that.
Yeah, it's like having Sam Adams everywhere, but whiskey for you guys. Boy. So, but I'm so glad you got a chance to sit down and talk, and get some of your story out there, because I know it's not easy being on the other side of the mic sometimes, of not being the one asking the questions and feeling like you're on the hot seat. But there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, that was me too. And that's why we do this, right? The more times we put out a story, Yeah. So thank you again, Christa. I appreciate it so much.